Chapter 10, Rome's Decline and Legacy. Section 2, Decline and Fall of the Empire. We're going to start off by talking about the weaknesses of the Roman Empire and why it led to its downfall. And there's 4 different areas in which we'll cover. The first one is economic problems. Some of the economic problems are no new sources of wealth after the empire stopped expanding. So when Rome conquered other lands, they gained valuable resources, and when Rome stopped gaining these new lands, the resources stopped as well. Taxes, they were high, and people didn't like paying those horrible taxes. And a decline in agriculture led to food shortages, so the poor people in Rome weren't happy. Military problems included constant war with nomadic people of the north. So you have Rome and the empire around it, right? The empire. And you have constantly the attacks by the nomadic people up here, the Germanic tribes, who are constantly trying to get into Rome because of the Huns. Also, Romans tried to hire mercenaries. Or they did hire mercenaries. These were soldiers who are paid to fight, but they really had no loyalty to Rome. And finally, Roman soldiers by this time were less disciplined and less loyal to the government. Some political issues include that the size of the Roman Empire was just too difficult to govern. I mean, it was huge. If you have a huge empire like this, and you're centralized, you're right here, you got all this to govern, and that's hard to do. And many government officials at this time were corrupt, meaning they kind of weren't nice people. They stole things from the government and people and so on and so forth. Social problems include the cost of education. It increased, so it became harder for people to pay to get an education. And Romans were less informed about civic matters. All right, so during a 50-year span, there were 37 emperors that were in power, and 34 of them either died during civil wars or through assassinations. So think about it. You have 50 years, you had 37 emperors. That's the percentages of how long you rule weren't great. Now in 284, a guy named Diocletian will come to power. He restores the order of the Roman Empire by ruling with an iron fist. So I'll make my little fist here. And he slams it down on the table. Iron fist. He didn't tolerate opposition at all. He placed troops permanently on the borders to protect it, and he lowered the price of bread. Now you might say, well, whoop-de-doo, but poor people would appreciate that, so he appealed to the poor people in that sense. Diocletian realized he could not rule such a large empire effectively, so he will divide it into 2 parts. So I'm going to, again, vaguely draw a Roman Empire here, and he will cut the empire in half, and Diocletian will rule the eastern part, and a guy named Maximilian will rule the western part. He gets Rome, Maximilian, and Diocletian gets a place called Byzantium. Once again, a civil war breaks out over who's going to control the empire. This was in 306 AD. This is after Diocletian. Constantine will emerge victorious. Remember the whole cross thing with the vision that in this sign, there's some fire, woo, you will conquer. And so by doing this, he takes control of Rome, and he reunites the 2 sides. But instead of going back to Rome, the capital, he changes it or stays in Byzantium, and he renames it Constantinople after himself. Beyond Rome's borders to the north were the Germanic tribes. So if this is my northern border of the empire, you have all these different tribes out here who are attacking. For example, the Goths or Vandals over here. You have Visigoths. But they're all trying to get into the empire because another group from out here, the Huns, are attacking these Germanic tribes, and so they're trying to get into the Roman Empire for protection. These Germanic tribes are called barbarians by the Romans because they didn't look like them. They're hairy, stinky, smelly. They eat food with their hands. They look crazy. They are looking uncivilized. They were probably pretty civilized, but maybe not to Rome standards. In 410, Germanic people attacked and plundered Rome, and in 476, the Vandals conquered Rome, which marked the end of the Western Roman Empire. So we have Rome here. We'll make Rome. And the Vandals will attack Rome, and they'll plunder it, meaning they will steal stuff or loot things. So let's say they take the O, and they take one of the arms of the M. Oh, they vandalize Rome. And then eventually the Vandals, get the word vandalize, Vandals, will come in and conquer and destroy Rome. And that ended the Western Roman Empire. Now the eastern side will stay in place at Constantinople and will continue to thrive for another 1,000 years. We'll talk about that in the next section. That'll be called the Byzantine Empire. In 486, a group called the Franks, yes, they're all called Frank in that group. No, I'm joking, they're not all called Frank. They're led by a guy named Clovis, who will conquer the remaining Western Roman lands of Gaul and form a new kingdom called the Frankish Kingdom. As a result, roads and other public structures started to fall apart in the empire, trade declined. However, the Roman Catholic Church becomes powerful, and even more powerful than it already had become. That is the end of section 2.